Little girl walks into the billionaire CEO's office alone, unaware of his identity, until one sentence broke the CEO's heart. The little girl stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, her paint-splattered overalls a stark contrast against the polished marble and chrome of the executive suite. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail and purple sneakers that lit up when she walked. Her ladybug backpack hung from one shoulder, worn and loved. The man behind the desk stared at her, his world tilting on its axis. She turned to face him, and that's when he saw them. His eyes, looking back at him from a face he'd never seen before, but somehow knew better than his own reflection. "I'm Piper." She said it with the kind of confidence that comes from not yet knowing the world can break you. "I came to ask you something important." The man's hands gripped the edge of his mahogany desk, knuckles white. "What's your last name, sweetheart?" "Castellano. Piper Castellano." Her head tilted, studying him with unsettling intensity. "Do you know my mom? You have the same eyes as me, and the same little cowlick right here." She pointed to the front of her hairline where a stubborn piece of hair refused to cooperate. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only calculate the timeline in his head. 8 years. The divorce. The woman he'd thrown away because she couldn't give him children. "What's your mother's name?" "Autumn. Autumn Castellano. She's a doctor. She does heart surgeries and saves people's lives." The room spun. Piper reached into her backpack and pulled out a worn envelope, the kind that had been opened and refolded hundreds of times. "I found this in Mom's special box. There's a letter in here from someone named Collier Thorne. That's you, right? The nameplate on your desk says, Collier Thorne, CEO. His voice came out as a whisper. "Yes, that's me. And there's a picture, too." She handed him a photograph, and his heart stopped completely. His wedding day. Him and Autumn, both impossibly young, radiantly happy, completely unaware of how thoroughly they would destroy each other. "You look like me in this picture. Same eyes, same chin, same cowlick. So I figured maybe you're my dad. But Mom never talks about you, except sometimes she gets this really sad look when she thinks I'm not watching. And my grandma Cece used to get really angry if anyone mentioned the Thorne man. That's you, right?" "Piper." The name came out broken. "How did you get here?" "Bus, and then I walked. It's not that far from school." Her matter-of-fact tone suggested solo travel across Seattle was perfectly normal for an 8-year-old. "Does your mother know you're here?" Something flickered across her face. Too much wisdom for someone so young. "Mom's in surgery. She won't be done for hours. So I came myself because there's this thing at school next week, and I needed to ask you before I made my decision." "What thing?" "A father-to-daughter dance." She said it simply, but her hands twisted the straps of her backpack. "All my friends are going with their dads, and I don't have a dad, which is usually fine because Mom is basically 2 parents in one, and Grandma Cece helped a lot before she died. But this is specifically for dads and daughters, and I thought..." She paused, her voice getting smaller. "Maybe you could be my dad for one night." The words hit him like a physical blow. Piper looked up at him with those devastating gray-green eyes, his eyes, and said, the sentence that would shatter everything he thought he knew about his life. "I don't need your money. I just need someone to dance with for 2 hours. Then you can go back to being important, and I'll leave you alone forever. I promise I won't be embarrassing or anything. I'm actually a really good dancer." Collier Thorne, billionaire CEO, master of the universe, a man who'd built a $4.7 billion empire before his 38th birthday, felt tears threatening for the first time in over a decade. This child, his child, standing in his office asking for something so simple and so devastating it broke his heart completely. Have you ever had someone from your past show up and turn your world upside down in 60 seconds? Have you ever discovered a secret that changed your entire life? This is the story of a man who threw away everything that mattered to chase everything that didn't, and the 8-year-old daughter he never knew existed who walked into his office one Tuesday afternoon and gave him a second chance he didn't deserve. If you believe people can change, if you believe in the power of redemption and second chances, stay with me, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about forgiveness, family, and what it really means to be a father. Let me take you back to the beginning, to understand how we got here, to this moment, to this little girl standing in this office. You need to know what came before. 8 years earlier, the penthouse in Pacific Heights felt more like a museum than a home. Pristine white walls, carefully curated artwork that cost more than most people's annual salary. Furniture positioned at precise angles that discouraged actual human comfort. Everything perfect. Everything cold. Everything exactly as the Thorne family expected. Autumn Castellano Thorne sat on the edge of the bathtub in the master's suite, staring at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands. Negative. The 15th one in 3 years of marriage. She'd stopped crying after the 10th test. Now she just felt numb. The door opened, without a knock. Privacy wasn't something her husband believed she deserved anymore. Collier Thorne stood in the doorway, 6'2" of tailored perfection in an Armani suit that cost more than the car Autumn's father had driven his entire life. At 33, he was the youngest CEO in his company's history, worth over $3 billion, accustomed to getting everything he wanted. Everything except the one thing that mattered most to his family legacy. Another negative? His voice was clinical, detached, like he was asking about quarterly earnings instead of their potential child. Autumn didn't look up. The doctor said we should give the new fertility treatments more time. My hormone levels are improving and it's been 3 years, Kendra. 3 years of treatments, specialists, procedures. His voice cut through her hope like ice through skin. Maybe it's time to accept the truth. What truth? She finally looked up at the man she'd married. The man who used to hold her while she cried after each miscarriage. The man who'd promised they would figure it out together. That man was long gone. That you can't give me what I need. The words landed like a slap. Autumn stood, the test clattering into the sink. What I need? What about what we need? What about our marriage? Our love for each other? Collier adjusted his cufflinks. A gesture Autumn had learned meant he was about to say something that would hurt her. Love doesn't continue the Whitmore legacy, Kendra. Love doesn't provide heirs for the company my great-grandfather built. I'm not a broodmare, Collier. I'm your wife. You're supposed to be both. His gray-green eyes were cold as winter steel. My grandmother was right. I should have married someone from our circle. Someone with a proven family line. Autumn felt her heart crack a little more. Your grandmother has hated me from day one because I'm not from old money. Because my father was a mechanic and my mother was a teacher. Because I actually earned my degrees instead of having buildings named after my family. Because you can't do the one job that matters. He moved toward the bar cart in their bedroom, pouring scotch with steady hands. Veronica Patterson is engaged to Charles Rothschild. They're already planning children. Jennifer Ashworth just gave birth to twins. Even Patricia Melbourne, who's barely 25, is pregnant with her second child. Each name felt like a dagger. These were the women Collier's family had wanted him to marry. The society princesses who came with the right pedigree and apparently working reproductive systems. So that's it. Autumn's voice shook. 3 years of marriage reduced to my failure to get pregnant. It's not personal, Autumn. It's practical. Not personal? Her voice rose. You're talking about divorce because I can't have children, and it's not personal? Collier took a long sip of his scotch before meeting her eyes. You're a beautiful, intelligent woman. You'll find someone who doesn't need what I need from a wife. Someone who can love you as you are. And what am I, Collier? Defective goods? He set down his glass. You're barren, and I can't spend the rest of my life married to someone who can't give me children. The word hung in the air between them. Barren, like she was a wasteland, an empty field, something broken beyond repair. Autumn stared at her husband in shock. The man she'd fallen in love with 5 years ago, the man who'd courted her with poetry and wildflower bouquets, the man who'd promised to love her in sickness and in health. That man had just reduced her to her biological functions. Get out. She whispered it first. Autumn, get out. Her voice echoed through the cavernous bedroom. Get out of this room. Get out of my sight. And don't you dare try to touch me or comfort me or pretend you have any decency left. Collier straightened his tie. I'll have my lawyer contact yours tomorrow. I'll be generous in the settlement. I don't want your money. You'll take it. You'll need it to start over. His tone was matter-of-fact, as if they were discussing a business transaction instead of the end of their marriage. Autumn's blood went cold. What does that mean? I've already spoken to Harlow van de Burg. We'll be announcing our engagement next month. The room spun. You've already chosen my replacement. I've chosen someone who can give me what I need. Someone who can breed for you, you mean? Collier's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Harlow is 28, from an excellent family, and her mother had 4 children with no complications. You've researched her fertility like you're buying livestock. I've done my due diligence, something I should have done before I married you. The last piece of Autumn's heart shattered. I loved you. I loved you more than anything in this world. Love isn't enough anymore. He moved toward the door. It was never enough for you. The truth of it settled over her, like ash. Your family's approval always mattered more than my heart. Collier paused at the door. You're a good woman, Autumn. You deserve someone who can appreciate what you have to offer. And what do I have to offer in your expert opinion? Beauty, intelligence, kindness, just not fertility. Get out of my house. It's my house. The penthouse, the car, the credit cards, everything had always been his. She'd been living in a gilded cage and hadn't realized it until the door slammed shut. Then I'll leave. Autumn's voice was hollow. The lawyers can handle the details. You can stay until the paperwork is finalized. I'll make other arrangements. He walked away, his footsteps echoing on the marble floors. 20 minutes later, Autumn heard his car start and drive away. She would learn later that he drove straight to Harlow van de Berg's apartment where he spent the night celebrating their future together. 3 weeks after that, Autumn signed divorce papers in a lawyer's office downtown, her signature shaky with tears and residual heartbreak. Collier hadn't even bothered to attend the meeting, sending his attorney to handle what he clearly viewed as an unpleasant but necessary business transaction. The settlement was generous, exactly as he'd promised. Enough money to start over, not enough to heal the wounds he'd carved into her soul. Autumn moved into a tiny apartment in Ballard, enrolled in the pre-med program she'd abandoned when she'd married Collier and tried to rebuild a life from the wreckage he'd left behind. And then, 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, she spent a Tuesday morning throwing up in her bathroom, staring at a positive pregnancy test with a mixture of joy and terror. She was pregnant. After 3 years of trying, countless treatments, and the devastating end of her marriage, her body had finally done what everyone said it couldn't do. She was carrying Collier Thorne's child. The irony was so sharp, it drew blood. For 3 days, Autumn debated calling him. He had a right to know, didn't he? This was what he'd wanted so desperately. An heir, a legacy, proof that he was capable of continuing the Thorne bloodline. But every time she picked up the phone, she remembered his voice. Cold, clinical, barren. She remembered the way he'd looked at her those last few months, like she was defective, broken, a disappointment he had to manage. And she thought about what would happen if she told him. He'd take the baby, use his money and his lawyers and his family's power to declare her an unfit mother. He'd raise her child in that cold museum of a penthouse with nannies and boarding schools and the same emotional neglect that had turned him into a man who could call his wife barren. So Autumn made a choice. She wouldn't tell him. She would raise this child alone, with love and warmth and all the things the Thorne family considered weakness. She would prove that she wasn't broken, that her worth wasn't determined by her ability to produce heirs for a family dynasty. She would become a doctor, build a career, create a life where her child would know they were wanted for who they were, not what they represented. It was a good plan, a solid plan. And then, at her 12-week ultrasound, the technician's face went strange. Is something wrong? Autumn's heart hammered. Please tell me something's not wrong. The technician turned the screen toward her. Not wrong exactly, just unexpected. Autumn stared at the monitor, not understanding what she was seeing. Ms. Castellano, the technician said gently, you're having triplets. The world went dark around the edges. When Autumn came to, she was lying on the exam table with a cool cloth on her forehead and the technician looking concerned. Deep breaths. You're okay. The babies are fine. Everything looks healthy. Triplets. Autumn's voice was faint. You're sure? Very sure. See. The technician pointed to the screen. 3 distinct heartbeats. 3 separate amniotic sacs. Fraternal triplets, looks like. Autumn started laughing, then crying, then laughing again, until the technician looked genuinely worried about her mental state. The man who'd divorced her for being barren had given her triplets. The universe had a sick sense of humor. Autumn's pregnancy was complicated from the start. Triplets usually are. She was put on bed rest at 28 weeks when early labor threatened. Her mother, Cece, moved from Chicago to Seattle, giving up her own retirement, to help her daughter through medical school and impending motherhood. The babies came at 34 weeks, small but healthy. 2 boys and a girl. Autumn held all 3 of them in the hospital bed, crying happy tears and terrified tears and exhausted tears all at once, and made them a promise. I will love you enough for 2 parents. I will work hard enough to give you the life you deserve. And I will never, ever let anyone make you feel like you're not enough exactly as you are. She named them Piper, after her grandmother who'd been a pilot when women weren't supposed to fly. Cove, after the protected harbors that weather any storm. And Ridge, after the mountains that stand unmoved by wind and rain. Strong names. Resilient names. Names for children who would grow up knowing their worth wasn't determined by their father's approval. The years that followed were brutal and beautiful in equal measure. Autumn juggled medical school classes with 3 infants. She studied while breastfeeding. She wrote papers during nap time. She took exams on 2 hours of sleep and pure determination. Her mother was a saint. Cece took care of the triplets while Autumn was in class or clinical rotations. She sang them to sleep, taught them to walk, and became the father figure they didn't have. There were times Autumn wanted to quit. Times she stood in her tiny kitchen at 2 in the morning, holding a screaming baby, while 2 others cried in their cribs and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. But then Piper would grab her finger with surprising strength, or Cove would look at her with those knowing eyes, or Ridge would stop crying the moment he heard her voice, and she'd remember why she was doing this. 4 years after her divorce, Autumn graduated medical school with honors. Her 3 toddlers sat in the audience with Cece, holding a sign that said, "Our mommy is a doctor." She completed her residency in cardiac surgery, driven by a desire to fix the one organ she understood intimately, the broken heart. She became known for her steady hands, her ability to save patients other doctors had written off, and her calm demeanor in crisis situations. By the time she was 34, Dr. Autumn Castellano was senior attending in cardiac surgery at Seattle General Hospital. She'd bought a modest craftsman house in Ballard. Her children were thriving in school, all 3 of them brilliant and creative and kind. She'd built a good life, a full life, a life that didn't include Collier Thorne or any reminder of the man who'd broken her. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon, her fearless 8-year-old daughter decided to go looking for the father she'd never met. Now, standing in Collier Thorne's office, Piper waited for his answer. Collier looked at this child. His child. 8 years of her life had passed without him. 8 years of first steps and first words and first days of school. 8 birthdays he'd missed. 8 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and all the tiny moments that make up a childhood. Gone, because he'd been too proud and too stupid to see what actually mattered. Piper. He came around the desk and knelt in front of her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. "I need you to understand something very important." She squared her shoulders, preparing for rejection. "I would be honored, more honored than you could possibly understand, to take you to that dance." Her face transformed. "Really, really, but sweetheart, I need you to know something. If I'm your father and looking at you, I have absolutely no doubt that I am, then I don't want to pretend for one night. I want to be your dad for real. For always." Piper's eyes went wide. "You mean it?" "I mean it, though we need to talk to your mom about this first because I think she's going to have some very strong feelings about me suddenly being in your life. Mom doesn't know I'm here." Piper's voice went small. "She's going to be so mad. At you, maybe a little. At me, definitely." Collier managed a smile despite the dread pooling in his stomach. "But we'll handle it together. Okay?" "Okay." Then, quietly, "Did you really not know about me?" "I had no idea." "If I had known," Collier's voice broke, "if I had known about you, I would have been there from the very beginning. Mom says you were mean to her, that you said things that hurt. The directness of children. No artifice, no softening, just truth. I was very mean to her. I said terrible things and I hurt her in ways I've regretted every day since. Did you apologize?" "I tried, but some hurts are too big for just an apology." Piper considered this with the seriousness of a much older person. "My grandma Cece used to say, actions matter more than words. She said you can tell who someone really is by what they do, not what they say. Your grandmother was very wise. So, what are your actions going to be?" 8 years old and asking the question that mattered most. "I'm going to make things right. I'm going to talk to your mom, apologize properly, and ask for the chance to be in your life. If she says no, I'll respect that. But I'm going to try." Piper nodded, satisfied with this answer. Can we go now? If Mom finishes surgery and I'm not there, Mrs. Chen next door is going to tell her I left, and then I'll be grounded for like a year. I'm driving you home." Collier stood. "And Piper, your mom is going to find out about this. We're going to tell her together. She's going to be really mad." Fear crept into Piper's voice. "At me, yes. Probably. But we'll face it together. Okay?" "Okay." Then, so quietly he almost missed it. "Does this mean you're really my dad now?" Collier felt something crack open in his chest. "If you'll have me, sweetheart. If you'll have me." Piper launched herself from the chair into his arms. The hug was fierce, trusting, everything he didn't deserve. "You're taller than I thought you'd be," she mumbled against his shoulder. "And you smell like important office building smell." He laughed despite everything. "I'll try to smell less important next time. And maybe wear normal clothes? You look really uncomfortable in that suit." Noted. The drive across Seattle was both too long and too short. Piper filled the silence with chatter about her school, her art class, her best friend Quincy, who was also going to the father-daughter dance with her stepdad. "My brothers are going to want to meet you too." She said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Collier's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Brothers? Yeah. Cove and Ridge. They're my age because we're triplets. Didn't I mention that?" "No. You did not mention that." "Oh, well, yeah. There's 3 of us. Mom says we came as a package deal from the universe because she needed 3 times the love to make up for." She stopped suddenly. "For what?" "Nothing." Piper looked out the window. "Just something Mom said once." But Collier knew. To make up for the father who wasn't there. To make up for being raised by a single mother. To make up for everything he'd taken from them by his absence. "What are your brothers like?" "Cove is the quiet one. He likes to draw and write poetry and think about big questions. He's really smart, but not like showing off smart. Just like observing the world smart." Piper's description was surprisingly insightful. "And Ridge is the leader. He's protective of me and Cove. And really protective of Mom. He's probably going to be mad that I came to find you without telling him." "Why?" "Because Ridge thinks it's his job to keep us all safe. Mom says he's been trying to be the man of the house since he was like 4 years old, which is silly because we're a team, and teams don't need a man in charge. But Ridge is very serious about responsibilities. He sounds like someone I'd like to meet. He's going to ask you a lot of questions, hard ones. He doesn't trust easy." "That's smart." Collier glanced at his daughter, this brave, brilliant child who tracked him down based on an old letter and a photograph. I don't blame him for being protective. They pulled into a neighborhood that was nothing like the Pacific Heights penthouse where Collier had lived with Autumn. These were modest homes with actual yards, bikes on front porches, basketball hoops over garage doors, the kind of neighborhood where people knew their neighbors and kids played in the street. The craftsman house at the end of the block had a small but well-maintained garden, flowers in mismatched pots, a porch swing, wind chimes that caught the late afternoon light. It looked like a home, a real home. The kind Collier had never actually had. And standing on that porch, still in surgical scrubs, face white with a mixture of terror and fury, was Autumn Castellano. 8 years. It had been 8 years since he'd seen her last. The day the divorce was finalized. She'd walked out of that lawyer's office with her head high and her heart in pieces, and he told himself it was for the best. She'd changed. Her auburn hair was shorter now, cut into a practical bob. She had fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, earned through too many sleepless nights and too much worry. She'd lost the softness she'd had at 26, replaced with a steel core that radiated from her very presence. She was somehow both harder and more beautiful than he remembered. And she was looking at him with the kind of fury that could strip paint from walls. "Piper Celestine Castellano." Her voice shook with barely controlled rage. "Get in this house right now." Collier opened the car door, stepping out onto the sidewalk like he was approaching a live explosive. Autumn's eyes locked onto him, and the world contracted to just the 2 of them. 8 years of hurt and anger and unfinished business crackling in the space between them. "You," the single word carried the weight of everything unsaid. "You brought her home. Mom, don't be mad at him." Piper scrambled out of the car. "I went to his office by myself. He didn't know I was coming. And Mom, he's my dad. I was right. Look at us. We have the same eyes and everything. Inside." Autumn's voice was ice. "Now, We'll discuss your solo adventure across the city later. But Mom, now, Piper. The little girl deflated, casting one pleading look back at Collier before disappearing into the house. Autumn walked down the porch steps with the controlled movements of someone trying very hard not to explode. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that Collier could smell her familiar scent of lavender and hospital antiseptic, far enough that the distance between them felt like an ocean. How long have you known? Her voice was carefully controlled. 90 minutes. She walked into my office, told me about a father-daughter dance, and showed me a letter I wrote you 8 years ago. The letter I thought you'd thrown away without reading. Something flickered across Autumn's face. I read it. I read it approximately 1,000 times. But by the time it arrived, I was 6 months pregnant and barely surviving. Medical school and so angry at you I couldn't see straight. I didn't know. Collier's voice was rough. I swear to you, I didn't know about them. Them. Autumn's laugh was bitter. So she told you. Triplets. The woman you divorced for being barren gave birth to 3 children. Your children. And you missed 8 years of their lives. Autumn, don't. The word was sharp as a scalpel. Don't you dare stand there and try to explain or apologize or make this into something manageable. You destroyed me, Collier. You called me barren and defective and threw me away like I was broken merchandise. And then you moved on with your life while I raised our children alone. If I had known, would it have mattered? The question stopped him cold. If I'd called you 3 months after our divorce and said, surprise, I'm pregnant, would you have come back? Or would you have written a check and signed away your rights so you could move on with Harlow Vande, whatever her name was, without complications? The terrible truth was, he didn't know. The man he'd been 8 years ago, drowning in his family's expectations and his own pride, might have chosen the easy way out. I don't know. The admission cost him. I'd like to think I would have done the right thing. But I was a different person then. A worse person. And what? You've changed. You've become some enlightened man who's ready for fatherhood. I've become someone who knows what I lost. Someone who spent 8 years in therapy trying to undo the damage my family did to me. Someone who realized too late that I threw away the only real thing I've ever had. Autumn's eyes glittered with unshed tears. Is this the part where you tell me you never stopped loving me? That leaving me was the biggest mistake of your life? Because I've heard pretty speeches before, Collier. I'm not interested in the sequel. I'm not asking for a sequel. I'm asking for a chance to know my children. You have no rights to them. I know that. But they have rights to me, if they want them. Piper came looking for me, Autumn. Our 8-year-old daughter took a bus across the city alone because she wanted to meet her father. Don't punish her for my mistakes. Direct hit. He watched Autumn's armor crack slightly. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Her voice went quiet. That you'd come back and charm your way into their lives, and then leave again when it gets hard or boring or inconvenient. I won't let you break their hearts the way you broke mine. Then let me prove I've changed. Supervised visits. Whatever you're comfortable with. I'll work with your schedule, your rules. Just please don't shut me out completely. Autumn studied his face for a long moment. The porch light was coming on, automatic timer clicking as dusk settled over Seattle. In that golden hour light, Collier could see every year of the 8 they'd been apart. Every sleepless night, every moment of struggle, every time she'd had to be both mother and father to 3 children. I have triplets. She said it like a confession, like she was still amazed by it herself. Triplets. Piper, who you met, and her brothers, Cove and Ridge. They're 8 years old, brilliant and perfect, and they're my entire world. Piper is the fearless one. Always has been. Cove is the gentle artist with your analytical mind hiding underneath all that creativity. Ridge is the protective leader who's been trying to be the man of the house since he was 4 years old. They sound incredible. They are. Autumn's voice was fierce with pride. And I will not let you into their lives if there's any chance you'll hurt them. I won't. You can't promise that. You're right. But I can promise to try. To show up consistently. To put them first, always. To respect your role as their mother and never undermine you. And if I ever fail at any of that, you can cut me off completely. Damn right I can. The front door opened and Piper stuck her head out. Are you done yelling? Because Cove wants to meet his dad too, and Ridge says he needs to assess the situation. Which I think means he wants to make sure Mr. Thorne isn't a bad guy. Autumn closed her eyes. Piper, I told you to stay inside. I know, but we could hear you from inside, and it seemed like things were getting less yelly, so I thought maybe it was safe. Despite everything, Collier saw Autumn's lips twitch slightly. You're still grounded. Worth it. Piper looked at Collier hopefully. So, can you stay for dinner? We're having tacos. Mom makes them with this special sauce that's really good and… Piper, please. The little girl's eyes were impossibly wide. I promise Ridge will be nice. Mostly nice. Somewhat nice. Collier looked at Autumn. This was her call, her house, her children, her life that he was asking permission to enter. Autumn sighed. In that sigh, he heard 8 years of exhaustion, fear, hope, and the faint possibility of forgiveness. One dinner. Her voice was firm, during which we established ground rules and realistic expectations. And, Collier, her eyes hardened. If you make them any promises you don't keep, I will personally ensure your professional reputation never recovers. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. Piper, tell your brothers to set an extra place. And for God's sake, warn Ridge that threatening. She paused. That threatening. Your father with his pocket knife is not appropriate dinner behavior. His name is Dad? Piper's face split into a radiant smile. You called him Dad. I called him your father. That's not the same as, oh, for the love of… Inside, Piper. Before I change my mind about all of this. As Piper dashed back into the house, Collier and Autumn stood in awkward silence. For the record, Autumn's voice was quiet. I kept your letter because even though I hated you, I needed to remember that you weren't always the man who hurt me. That once, briefly, you were capable of honesty and regret. Don't make me regret keeping it. I won't. We'll see. She turned and walked into the house, leaving him to follow. Collier stepped through the doorway into controlled chaos. The house was nothing like the sterile penthouse where he'd lived with Autumn. This was a home, lived in, loved in, with crayon drawings magnetized to the refrigerator, a pile of library books. On the coffee table, soccer cleats by the door, and photographs covering every available surface. He was studying a photo of 3 toddlers covered in what appeared to be birthday cake when a voice behind him said, "That was our 3rd birthday. Mom let us eat cake first before dinner because we asked nicely." Collier turned to find a boy who looked exactly like Piper. Same gray-green eyes, same dark hair, same distinctive thorn bone structure. But where Piper was all energy and movement, this child had a stillness to him. He held a well-worn sketchbook under one arm and regarded Collier with careful assessment. I'm Cove. He said it simply. Piper says you're our biological father. I am. It's very nice to meet you, Cove. Mom says you didn't know about us. I didn't, but I wish I had. Cove considered this with unnerving focus. What would you have done differently if you'd known? The question was too mature for an 8-year-old, but Collier answered honestly. Everything. I would have done everything differently. That's not very specific. No, it's not. But I think maybe the specifics are conversations I need to have with your mom first, and then with all 3 of you when you're ready. Logical. Cove nodded approvingly. Piper likes you. She has good instincts about people mostly. She's impulsive but usually right. What about you? What do your instincts say? Before Cove could answer, another boy appeared. This one wore a serious expression and a t-shirt that said, Future Engineer. He had the same eyes, the same features, but carried himself with an authority that seemed beyond his years. You're him. The boy said it flatly. Not a question. I'm Collier Thorne. You must be Ridge. I must be. The child crossed his arms in a gesture Collier recognized as his own defensive posture. Piper says you want to be our dad. I'd like the chance to try. Yes. Why? Ridge's eyes narrowed. You've been fine without us for 8 years. We've been fine without you. The words hurt, precisely because they were true. Ridge. Autumn's voice came from the kitchen doorway. Remember what we discussed about giving people a chance to explain themselves. You also said, actions matter more than words. Ridge countered without breaking eye contact with Collier. So I'm waiting to see his actions. Fair enough. Collier met his son's challenging gaze. I respect that. Actions do matter more than words. So, how about this? I'd like to come to your next soccer game or school event or whatever is important to you. Not because I'm trying to buy my way into your life, but because I genuinely want to know who you are. I don't play soccer. I do robotics club. Then I'd like to come to your next robotics meeting. It's on Thursdays at 4:30. I'll be there. Ridge's expression was pure skepticism. You're a CEO. Don't you have important meetings? Nothing more important than this. We'll see. Ridge turned to his mother. Can I keep my pocket knife at the table? Absolutely not. But how will I protect us if he's secretly a villain? Your devastating wit and intelligence will have to suffice. Knife in the drawer. Ridge. Now. As Ridge reluctantly handed over what appeared to be a Swiss Army knife, Collier caught Autumn hiding a small smile. Dinner was simultaneously the most uncomfortable and most wonderful experience of Collier's life. The children peppered him with questions ranging from how much money do you actually have, from Piper, to what are your views on sustainable technology and environmental responsibility, from Cove, to what's your plan for being a dad when you have exactly zero experience, from Ridge. Autumn sat at the head of the table, watching everything with the alertness of a surgeon monitoring vitals, ready to intervene the moment he said anything that might hurt her children. The tacos were delicious. The conversation was intense. The whole experience felt surreal. Collier learned that Piper wanted to be an artist like the old version of Mom before she had to be serious all the time. That Cove wrote poetry and built intricate sculptures from materials he found at the recycling center. That Ridge had already designed 3 different robots and planned to apply to MIT when he was old enough. He learned that Autumn had perfected her mango salsa recipe during medical residency when it was the only meal she could make that all 3 children would eat without complaint. He learned that his children were brilliant, funny, kind, and had clearly been raised with more love than he'd experienced in his entire childhood. Mom cried when we were born, Piper announced during dessert. Ice cream sundaes that the children assembled with elaborate toppings. Grandma Cece told us. Mom was so scared because we came early and were really small, but she held all 3 of us and cried happy tears. Collier's eyes found Autumn across the table. She'd been alone, probably terrified, holding 3 premature babies with no partner to support her. Because of him. Because he'd called her barren and thrown her away. Your mom is the strongest person I've ever known. He said it quietly but meant every word. Obviously, Ridge said with the supreme confidence of a child stating an indisputable fact. She's basically a superhero. She saves people's actual hearts. She saved mine once too. Collier admitted. A long time ago, I was just too stupid to appreciate it. Autumn's eyes widened slightly at the admission. And then you hurt her, Cove said matter-of-factly. Piper read us the letter you wrote, the one about regret and mistakes. Cove. Autumn's face flushed. That was private. We're a democracy, Piper interrupted. We voted on whether to read it. 2-1. Ridge abstained. I didn't want to be involved in the snooping, Ridge clarified. But once they'd already read it, I needed to know what it said for security purposes. Autumn dropped her head into her hands. I'm raising tiny anarchists. Informed citizens, Cove corrected, despite the mortification of having his most vulnerable moment read by 3 8-year-olds. Collier felt something warm bloom in his chest. These were his children. Brilliant, boundary-pushing, democratic decision-makers who loved their mother fiercely and weren't afraid to hold him accountable. After dinner, while Autumn supervised cleanup, you cooked, Mom, we cleaned. Those are the rules, Collier. Wandered the living room studying the photographs that chronicled 8 years he'd missed. Autumn holding 3 tiny babies in a hospital bed, looking exhausted and radiant. The children's first steps captured in a blur of motion. First day of kindergarten with matching backpacks. Autumn in her graduation gown, triplets holding a sign that said, Our mommy is a doctor. An older woman, Autumn's mother he assumed, at every important milestone. No photos of him. He'd been completely erased from their history. Mom kept one picture of you. A quiet voice said. Collier turned to find Cove standing in the doorway, sketchbook in hand. She did, in her bedroom. It's from your wedding. You're both laughing about something. Cove paused. She doesn't know I know about it. I saw it when I was looking for a book she borrowed. What were you looking for? A book about how people fall in and out of love. I was doing research. Research for what? For understanding why you left. Cove opened his sketchbook, revealing a detailed pencil drawing. It was Collier and Autumn's wedding photo, rendered with stunning accuracy. The drawing captured not just their faces, but the emotion of that moment. The joy and hope and promise of a future they'd both believed in. Cove, this is, Collier's throat tightened. You're incredibly talented. I know. No arrogance, just fact. I want to understand people, how they work, why they hurt each other, how they heal. Drawing helps me figure it out. Have you figured it out? Why I left? Cove studied him with those two wise eyes. I think maybe you were scared. And sometimes when people are scared, they hurt the people who love them most because it feels safer than being vulnerable. 8 years old and diagnosing his entire psychology with frightening accuracy. You're not wrong. I usually aren't. Cove hesitated. Are you still scared? Terrified, but for different reasons now. What are you afraid of? That I'll disappoint you, all of you. That I won't know how to be a good father. That I've missed too much and there's no way to make it right. Cove considered this seriously. Mom says the best apology is changed behavior. So maybe instead of being afraid, you could just be different than you were before. When did you get so wise? I've been 8 for 7 months now. You learn a lot in 7 months. Collier felt something shift in his chest. This quiet, perceptive child who created art to understand human nature. His son. Thursday, Cove said. Robotics Club. Ridge will be watching to see if you actually show up. I'll be there. Good. Because Ridge is protective and skeptical, but he wants to believe you. We all do. Just don't prove us wrong. With that, Cove drifted away, leaving Collier alone with his wedding portrait rendered in his son's hand. After the children had gone to bed, with significant negotiation about toothbrushing and appropriate bedtime for almost, third graders, Autumn and Collier sat on the front porch in the kind of awkward silence that only ex-spouses can achieve. They're extraordinary, Collier said finally. They are. You did an incredible job raising them. I didn't have a choice. Autumn's voice was tight. You raised the children you have with the resources available. You could have contacted me, asked for help, financial support at least. Autumn's laugh was bitter. And give you the satisfaction of proving I needed you? Of validating your family's opinion that I wasn't good enough on my own? No, thank you. I got through medical school with loans and scholarships and my mother's help. We survived. You didn't just survive. You thrived. You became senior attending cardiac surgeon. You raised 3 brilliant children. You built an incredible life. I achieved that through 16-hour days and countless nights when I wanted to quit but couldn't because 3 small humans needed me to be strong. Her resentment was earned, valid, completely justified. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. For all of it. For believing my family over my own heart. For those terrible things I said. For missing 8 years of our children's lives. Stop. Autumn held up a hand. I don't need your apology list. I need to know that if I let you into their lives, you won't destroy them the way you destroyed me. I won't. You can't promise that. Then what do you need from me? What would make you feel safe letting me be their father? Autumn was quiet for so long Collier thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, vulnerable in a way that reminded him of the woman he'd married. I need you to understand that being a parent isn't about showing up for the highlight reel. It's grocery shopping at 9 p.m. because you suddenly realize someone needs poster board for a project due tomorrow. It's sitting through terrible school concerts where they play the recorder off key. It's middle of the night stomach bugs and fights about homework and 1,000 tiny unglamorous moments that no one celebrates. I know. Do you? Because you're a billionaire CEO, Collier. Your time is worth thousands of dollars per hour. How long before Thursday Robotics Club feels like an imposition? How long before you delegate fatherhood to nannies and assistants because it's more efficient? I won't. My mom gave up her retirement to help me raise them. Autumn's voice broke. She was there for every nightmare, every fever, every moment I couldn't be. Because I was in surgery or studying or trying to hold our life together. She died 2 years ago and it broke all of us. Especially the kids. They lost the most consistent father figure they'd ever known. Collier's chest tightened. I'm so sorry. My point is that they've already experienced loss. They've already learned that people leave, even people who love them. I will not let you be another person who breaks their hearts. Then let me prove I won't be. 6 months. Give me 6 months of supervised visits, of showing up consistently, of being present in whatever capacity you're comfortable with. If I fail, if I miss commitments or prioritize work, or show any sign of being the man I was 8 years ago, you can cut me off completely and I won't fight it. Autumn studied him in the porch light, searching for something in his face. Why now? She asked. What's different? You're divorced from Harlow, free to live however you want. Why does being a father suddenly matter? Collier thought about the moment Piper had walked into his office. Small and fierce and looking for a father who didn't know she existed. Because I spent 8 years building a life that looked perfect on paper and felt empty in reality. I achieved every goal my family set for me and felt nothing. And then your daughter, our daughter, walked into my office and asked if I'd pretend to be her father for one night, and it broke something open inside me. He paused, gathering the courage to continue. The realization that I'd had a real family, a real chance at meaning, and I'd thrown it away for the approval of people who never actually cared about my happiness. That's what's different. I don't want to die without knowing my children. I don't want to reach the end of my life and realize I repeated the same mistakes my father made. I want to be better. I want to try. That's very therapeutic. Autumn's voice was dry. How long have you been in counseling? 6 years, twice a week. Despite herself, Autumn's lips twitched. My therapist would have a field day with this situation. Mine actually did. I called her from the car after meeting Piper. Emergency session. What did she say? That I need to respect your boundaries, move at your pace, and understand that I'm not entitled to forgiveness just because I've done the work to become a better person. Smart woman. She'd like you. You're both terrifyingly perceptive and don't let me get away with anything. They sat in silence. The street was quiet. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Wind chimes sang in the evening breeze. Thursday, Autumn said finally. Robotics Club, 4:30 at Clearwater Elementary. If you're even 5 minutes late, Ridge will never forgive you. I'll be early. Saturday morning. Cove has art class at 9. Community Center on Denny. They're working on recycled material sculptures. I'll be there. And Piper has her father-daughter dance next Friday. 7 p.m. School gymnasium. Collier's throat closed. You're letting me take her? I'm letting you attend with our family. All of us. Because that's what we are. A family unit. You don't get to swoop in and be the fun dad while I'm the disciplinarian. You get the whole package or nothing. I want the whole package. We'll see. Autumn stood, signaling the end of the conversation. You have 6 months to prove you're serious. 6 months of showing up consistently regardless of how inconvenient or boring or unglamorous it gets. Can you do that? Yes. Then we'll try. But Collier, her voice hardened. The first time you make one of them cry, the first time you prioritize a board meeting over a school event, the first time you show any sign of being the man who called me defective, we're done. Permanently. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. You should go. It's late, and I have surgery at 6 a.m. Collier stood as well, wanting to say more, wanting to somehow bridge 8 years with words. But he'd learned that some distances can't be crossed with language alone. Thank you, he said instead, for giving me this chance. I won't waste it. See that you don't. As he walked to his car, Collier heard her voice call out softly behind him. Collier. He turned. They're good kids, really good, and they deserve a father who's worthy of them. I know. I'm going to try to be. Don't try. Autumn's eyes glinted in the porch light. Do, if you're watching this story and you believe in second chances, if you've ever had to, decide whether to forgive someone who hurt you deeply. Let me know in the comments. And if you want to see how this family's journey unfolds, hit that like button right now. Because what happens next will either prove that people can truly change or confirm that some mistakes are too big to fix. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. The first Thursday, Collier arrived at Clearwater Elementary at 4 p.m., 30 minutes early. He sat in his Tesla in the parking lot, reviewing notes he'd made about robotics basics, feeling like a complete idiot, but determined to at least understand what his son was passionate about. He'd spent the previous evening watching YouTube tutorials on basic coding and robotics fundamentals. His assistant had been shocked when he'd blocked out every Thursday afternoon for the foreseeable future. No meetings, no calls, no exceptions. At 4:25, Collier walked into the classroom and found Ridge already setting up his project. Some kind of motorized vehicle constructed from recycled electronics and what appeared to be parts from an old computer. You're early. Ridge said it with surprise flickering across his face. I didn't want to risk being late. Most adults are at least 10 minutes late to everything. Ridge didn't look up from his work. They say it's because they're busy, but really it's because they don't prioritize other people's time. Your mother teach you that? Life taught me that. Mom just confirmed it. For the next hour, Collier watched his son code a robot to navigate an obstacle course. Ridge's fingers flew over the keyboard with confidence. His troubleshooting was methodical, logical, impressive for someone so young. Collier offered encouragement and asked questions that revealed both his genuine interest and his complete ignorance of robotics. You really don't know anything about this, do you? Ridge asked at one point, pausing to look at him directly. Not a thing. But I'd like to learn. Why? Because it matters to you. Ridge considered this, then pulled out his notebook. Okay, here are the basics. This is an Arduino board. It's basically a tiny computer that can control motors and sensors. You write code that tells it what to do. See? He walked Collier through the fundamentals with surprising patience, explaining concepts in ways that assumed no prior knowledge but didn't talk down to him. When the session ended, Ridge packed up his supplies with methodical care. Are you coming back next week? The question was casual, but Collier heard the weight underneath it. Every week, as long as you'll have me. Ridge nodded. Okay then, maybe next time you should bring a notebook. If you're going to learn this stuff properly, I'll bring a notebook. As Collier drove home, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Pride that had nothing to do with profit margins or market share. Pride in his son's brilliance. Pride that Ridge had given him a tiny bit of trust. Saturday morning, Collier met Autumn and Cove at the community center on Denny. The art class was held in a bright room that smelled like paint and possibility. 20 children sat at tables covered with recycled materials, plastic bottles, old circuit boards, discarded packaging, broken toys. Cove's workspace was more organized than the others, materials sorted by type and color. A sketch of his planned sculpture taped to the table for reference. The sculpture itself was emerging as something beautiful and complex. A heart constructed entirely from recycled circuit boards, wires, and small LED lights. It's for Mom, Cove explained quietly when Collier sat down beside him. Because she fixes people's hearts, but who fixes hers? The simple question devastated Collier. It's beautiful, Cove. Really beautiful. I want the lights to pulse like a real heartbeat. Cove twisted a wire with careful precision. But I can't figure out the timing. Mr. Jameson says I need to learn more about circuits first. What if we learned together? Collier suggested. I could find us some resources about basic electronics and we could work through them. Cove looked up, surprise and hope mingling on his face. You'd want to do that? I'd love to do that. Across the room, Autumn was helping another child with their project. But Collier could feel her awareness of him, watching, assessing, making sure he didn't hurt her baby. Mom cried when I told her the concept, Cove said softly. Happy tears, but also sad tears. I think maybe she's still hurt from whatever you did. Collier's chest tightened. I think you're right. Are you going to fix it? I'm going to try. Trying isn't the same as doing. Cove's eyes were too wise for 8 years old. No, it's not. But sometimes trying is all you can do, and you have to hope it's enough. After class, Autumn walked out with them. The morning was crisp, typical Seattle autumn, the kind of weather that required layers and coffee. He did well today, Autumn said neutrally. He's incredibly talented. The sculpture is extraordinary. He gets that from my side of the family. Her tone was pointed. My mother was a quilter, made art from scraps and remnants. Cove has her eye for seeing beauty in broken things. The implication hung between them. Autumn had learned to see beauty in broken things, to make art from remnants, to build a life from what he'd left behind. I'd like to help him with the electronics, Collier said. If that's okay with you. Autumn studied him for a long moment. That would be fine. But Collier, don't promise him things you can't deliver. Cove is sensitive. He feels everything deeply. If you let him down, it'll break something in him. I understand. Do you? Because in my experience, people like you don't actually understand how much damage casual cruelty can do. People like me, rich, powerful, accustomed to getting what you want and discarding what you don't. The words stung because they were accurate. Or had been. 8 years ago. I'm not that person anymore. We'll see. Autumn turned to Cove. Come on, sweetheart. We need to get groceries before your brothers eat everything in the house. As they walked away, Cove looked back and waved. A small gesture that felt like everything. The father-daughter dance was both wonderful and excruciating in ways Collier hadn't anticipated. Piper wore a purple dress that she decorated herself with hand-painted flowers. The paint was slightly uneven, the flowers wonderfully imperfect. Her sparkly sneakers completed the outfit because fancy shoes hurt, and why would I wear something that hurts? Ridge and Cove came too, standing with Autumn along the gymnasium wall, watching, supporting their sister, making sure their father didn't mess this up. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Collier told Piper as they entered the decorated gym. "You clean up nice too, but you still look kind of stiff. I'll work on that. Try smiling more. You have a good smile, but you don't use it enough." Noted. The gym was full of fathers and daughters, some dancing awkwardly to pop music the kids had chosen, others standing in clusters talking while their daughters ran around with friends. Piper grabbed Collier's hand and pulled him onto the dance floor just as a slow song started. "Do you know how to dance?" she asked. "I know how to corporate event dance. I'm not sure that counts. Just follow my lead." She placed his hands in the proper position with the authority of someone who'd clearly practiced. "And don't step on my sneakers. They light up and I want to show everyone." "Yes, ma'am." As they swayed to the music, Piper chattered about her day, her art class, her best friend Quincy, who was dancing with her stepdad across the gym. "Mom's watching us," Piper observed. "She has her worried face on." Collier glanced over. Autumn stood with her arms crossed, expression carefully neutral. But her eyes were full of complex emotions he couldn't quite read. "She's protecting you," Collier said. "From you?" "From the possibility that I might hurt you." "Will you?" "Not on purpose. But I'm new at this, Piper. I'm going to make mistakes." "Mom says mistakes are how we learn. She says the important thing is to apologize and do better next time." "Your mom is very wise. Are you going to do better?" "Every single day." The song ended, but Piper didn't let go of his hand. "Mr. Morrison, that's Quincy's stepdad. He's been her dad since she was 3. She doesn't even remember her biological dad. Do you think I'll remember this? Our first dance? I hope so." Collier knelt down so they were eye level. "Because I know I'll remember it for the rest of my life." "Good, because even though you weren't there before, you're here now. And Mom says what matters is what you do going forward, not what you did in the past." Before Collier could respond, Piper hugged him suddenly, fiercely, the kind of hug that children give when they trust completely. "I'm glad I found you," she whispered. Collier's eyes burned. "I'm glad you found me too." When the dance ended, Ridge and Cove approached with careful casualness. "That looked nice," Cove said. "You didn't step on her shoes," Ridge added. "That's good. Spatial awareness is important. Thanks for the feedback, guys. We have a soccer game tomorrow," Piper announced. "Well, I have a soccer game. Can you come?" Collier looked at Autumn, who gave a tiny nod. "I'll be there." "What time?" 10 a.m. at Green Lake Field." "I'll be there at 9:30. Ridge and Cove exchanged a look, some silent twin communication that Collier couldn't interpret. "We'll see," Ridge said finally, but there was something softer in his voice, something that might have been hope. The weeks blurred into a pattern, a rhythm, a new kind of normal that Collier had never experienced before. Thursday afternoons at Robotics Club, Ridge gradually opened up, sharing his designs, asking for feedback on coding problems, letting Collier be part of his process. Saturday mornings at art class, Cove working on his heart sculpture while Collier researched electronics tutorials. Quiet companionship, punctuated by deep conversations about art and emotion and why people hurt each other. Sunday afternoons at soccer games, Piper racing up and down the field with wild enthusiasm and questionable technique. Collier standing on the sidelines with other parents, learning the rhythm of youth sports. And slowly, incrementally, his children began to trust him. Month 2 brought unexpected challenges. Collier showed up to Robotics Club to find Ridge in tears, trying to hide them behind anger. "It doesn't work." Ridge shoved his robot away. "I've rewritten the code 3 times and it still doesn't work, and regionals are in 2 weeks and I'm going to fail." "You're not going to fail." Collier sat down beside him. "Can I see the code?" "You won't understand it. You're still learning basics." "Then explain it to me. Sometimes teaching someone else helps you see the problem differently." Ridge walked him through the code line by line, and there, in the explanation, he caught his own error. Wait, I initialized the wrong variable. That's why the sensor isn't reading correctly. Ridge's fingers flew over the keyboard, making the correction. The robot beeped to life and navigated the obstacle course perfectly. I can't believe I missed that. Ridge looked at Collier with grudging respect. How did you know? I didn't. But I knew you'd figure it out if you talked it through. Is that what dads do? Help you think through problems? That's what I'd like to do. If you'll let me. Ridge was quiet for a moment. Okay, you can keep coming to Robotics Club. It was the first time he'd explicitly invited Collier instead of just tolerating his presence. Progress. Month 3 brought a different kind of test. Collier's board was furious about his new schedule. Thursday afternoons blocked off. Saturdays unavailable. Sundays completely off limits. His grandfather called from Boston, voice sharp with disapproval. I'm hearing disturbing reports about your priorities, Collier. My priorities are exactly where they should be. You're neglecting the company for some woman's illegitimate children. They're my children, and they're not illegitimate. They're 3 brilliant kids who deserve their father's time. You have responsibilities to this family, to the legacy we've built. I have responsibilities to my children first. His grandfather hung up on him. Collier didn't care. That same week, Piper's soccer team made it to the semifinals. The game was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Thursday, directly during Robotics Club. Collier called Ridge personally. I have a conflict I need to run by you. Okay, Piper's soccer game is at the same time as Robotics Club. I can't be in 2 places at once. I'm planning to go to her game because it's a playoff situation and she really wants me there. But I wanted you to know it's not because I'm choosing her over you. It's just the timing. Ridge was quiet for so long Collier thought the call had dropped. That's fair, Ridge said finally. You should go to her game, but you have to promise to come to my regional competition next month. I promise. I'll be in the front row. Okay then. After the call ended, Collier sat in his office staring at his phone. His son had given him permission to miss an event, had understood the impossible choice, had trusted that Collier would keep his promise about the competition. It was such a small thing, and also everything. Piper's team won their semifinal game. She scored 1 goal and assisted on another. After the game, covered in grass stains and pure joy, she launched herself at Collier. Did you see my goal? I saw everything. You were amazing. Mom says you missed Ridge's Robotics Club for this. I did, but I'm going to his regional competition. You can't clone yourself, so sometimes you have to make hard choices. That's very mature, Piper said seriously. I'm proud of you. The role reversal made Collier laugh. Thanks, sweetheart. You're welcome. Now can we get ice cream? Mom said we could if we won. Absolutely. At the ice cream shop, Autumn sat across from him while the triplets debated flavors with intense seriousness. You handled that well, she said quietly. The scheduling conflict? The conversation with Ridge, calling him directly, explaining your reasoning, promising to make up for it. Her eyes met his. That's good parenting. I'm learning. You are. Autumn's voice held something that might have been approval. The kids are starting to trust you. What about you? What about me? Are you starting to trust me? Autumn looked at her children. Piper was gesturing wildly while explaining something. Cove was listening with patient attention. Ridge was fact-checking her story with typical precision. I'm starting to believe you might actually keep showing up. That's not the same as trust, but it's something. I'll take it. Month 4 brought the breakthrough Collier hadn't known he was waiting for. He arrived early to art class and found Cove sitting alone at a table, sketchbook open to a drawing Collier recognized immediately. His and Autumn's wedding photo, rendered in perfect detail. You drew that, Collier said softly. Cove startled, then nodded. Mom kept one picture of you in her bedroom. I found it when I was looking for a book. I wanted to remember what you looked like when you loved her. The simple statement broke something in Collier's chest. I still love her. Cove studied him with those 2 perceptive eyes. Does she know that? I don't know. Probably not. I'm not sure she'd believe me if I told her. Why not? Because I hurt her very badly. Said things I can never take back. Loving someone doesn't erase the damage you've done to them. Cove turned to a fresh page in his sketchbook. I've been trying to understand people, how they work, why they hurt each other, how they heal. Have you figured it out? Cove began sketching as he talked. I think maybe people hurt each other when they're scared. And sometimes when people are scared, they push away the people who love them most because it feels safer than being vulnerable. That's exactly what I did. I know. Cove's pencil moved across the page with confident strokes. But I think maybe you're not that person anymore. I think maybe you were scared then, and now you're scared of different things. What do you think I'm scared of now? Disappointing us. Failing as a father. Not being good enough to deserve a second chance. The accuracy of his 8-year-old's assessment was staggering. You're not wrong. I usually aren't. Cove looked up from his drawing. Are you still in love with Mom? Yes. Does she know? Like I said, I don't think she'd believe me. Maybe you should show her instead of telling her. Actions matter more than words, right? Right. Cove went back to his sketch. I'm drawing a new picture. You and Mom and us. The family we could be if everyone was brave enough. Can I see it when you're done? Maybe. Cove's small smile was pure mischief. If you keep showing up. That same week, Ridge's regional robotics competition arrived. Collier showed up 2 hours early, bought a good seat, set up his phone to record every moment. When Ridge's team was called to compete, Collier's heart hammered like he was the one on stage. Ridge's robot performed flawlessly, navigating obstacles, completing tasks, demonstrating the kind of precise coding that impressed even the judges. When they announced Ridge's team had won first place, Collier was on his feet cheering before he realized he'd stood up. Ridge accepted his trophy with characteristic seriousness. But when he looked into the audience and found Collier, his face split into a genuine smile. After the competition, Ridge ran over with his trophy clutched in both hands. Did you see? We won first place. We're going to state championships. I saw everything. You were incredible. That code was flawless. I've been working on it for months. Ridge's words tumbled out in a rush of excitement. Mr. Peterson said it was some of the cleanest code he's seen from a third grader, and the obstacle course time was 3 seconds faster than our practice runs. And he stopped suddenly, awareness catching up with enthusiasm. You stayed the whole time, even the boring parts. There are no boring parts when it comes to you. Ridge looked down at his trophy, then back up at Collier. Can I tell people you're my dad? Not just someone Mom works with. Actually, my dad. Collier's throat closed. I would be honored. Okay, good. Because Ethan from the other team kept asking who you were, and I wanted to say my dad, but I didn't know if I was allowed yet. You're allowed. Anytime you want. That night, Autumn called Collier after the kids were in bed. Ridge hasn't stopped talking about the competition. Or about you being there. I wouldn't have missed it for anything. He wants you to come to his state championship next month. I'll be there. Autumn was quiet for a moment. He called you Dad today. Multiple times. Do you know what a big deal that is for him? I think so. For 8 years, Ridge has been trying to be the man of the house, trying to protect me and his siblings, trying to fill a role that was way too big for a little boy. And today he finally let someone else carry some of that weight. Her voice broke slightly. Thank you for showing up, for being consistent, for letting my son be a kid instead of a substitute adult. Thank you for giving me the chance. After they hung up, Collier sat in his penthouse, the same one he'd shared with Autumn a lifetime ago. It felt cold, empty, a monument to everything that didn't matter. He'd been thinking about selling it, about finding something smaller, warmer, closer to Ballard, closer to his family. His phone buzzed with a text from Cove, a photo of his latest sketch. Collier and Autumn and 3 children, all holding hands, all smiling. The family we could be if everyone was brave enough. Collier saved the image and used it as his phone background. Bravery, that's what it would take. The courage to be vulnerable, to risk rejection, to try for something real instead of settling for co-parenting civility. But first, he had to prove he could handle the unglamorous parts, the parts that tested commitment. That test came in month 5. Autumn called at 2 a.m. Collier answered on the first ring, instantly alert. I need your help. Her voice shook. What's wrong? I'm at the hospital. Emergency surgery that's going longer than expected. The kids are home alone. I called Mrs. Chen next door, but she's not answering and I can't reach my usual backup and I don't know what to do. I'm on my way. Give me 15 minutes. Collier. She sounded close to tears. I've never left them overnight alone. They're probably terrified. Piper gets scared during storms and it's been thundering. Ridge will be trying to hold everything together. Cove will be worrying about me, and I can't leave my patient on the table. Autumn, breathe. Focus on your patient. Your kids are about to be safe. I promise. He made it to her house in 12 minutes, breaking every speed limit. Let himself in with the emergency key she'd given him at month 3, a gesture that had felt monumental at the time. All 3 children were awake, huddled together in Ridge's room. Piper clutched a stuffed elephant. Cove had his sketchbook. Ridge sat with his back against the headboard, clearly trying to project calm while being terrified. Mom? Piper's voice was small and scared. It's me. Dad. Mom's still in surgery, but she asked me to come stay with you. The relief on their faces was immediate and complete. Is she okay? Ridge demanded. She's fine. Just a complicated surgery, taking longer than expected. But she wanted to make sure you weren't alone. Thunder cracked outside and Piper flinched. It's really loud. Her voice trembled. Storms always sound worse than they are. Collier sat on the edge of the bed. What if we went downstairs? Made some hot chocolate? Storms are less scary when you have hot chocolate. Mom doesn't usually let us have sugar after 8 p.m., Ridge said. I think Mom would make an exception tonight. They ended up in the living room. Piper and Cove on the couch wrapped in blankets. Ridge in the armchair trying to maintain his role as protector. Collier on the floor with his back against the couch. He told them stories about growing up in Boston, carefully edited to remove the loneliness and his family's coldness, focusing instead on funny moments and minor adventures. When Piper asked what his dad was like, Collier chose honesty. My father was very focused on work and legacy. He wasn't around much, and when he was around, he wasn't particularly warm or affectionate. Is that why you weren't around for us? Cove asked. Because your dad taught you that work was more important than family? Partly, but that's not an excuse. I made my own choices, bad ones, and I hurt your mother because I believed the wrong things about what mattered. What changed? Ridge's question was direct. Piper walked into my office and asked me to be her dad for one night, and I realized I'd spent 8 years chasing everything that didn't matter while missing everything that did. Like us? Piper asked. Exactly like you. Gradually, one by one, the children fell asleep. Piper first, curled against Cove. Then Cove, his head on Piper's shoulder. Finally Ridge, fighting it until the end, but eventually surrendering. Collier stayed awake all night, watching them sleep, listening to their breathing, making sure they were safe. Autumn found them like that at 7 a.m. She stood in the doorway, still in her surgical scrubs, exhausted from the long night, taking in the scene. Her 3 children sleeping peacefully. Collier wide awake on the floor beside them, the hot chocolate mugs on the coffee table, the blankets tucked carefully around small bodies. Surgery went well? Collier asked quietly, not wanting to wake the kids. Yes. Autumn's voice was soft. The patient is stable. Good. You stayed all night. Of course. You have a board meeting at 8. I rescheduled. Autumn's eyes widened. You rescheduled a board meeting? Some things are more important than quarterly earnings. For a long moment, Autumn just looked at him. Really looked at him. Without the guardedness, without the resentment. Just seeing him, something shifted in that moment. Some invisible barrier crumbling. Thank you, she said, for being here, for taking care of them, she paused, for being exactly what they needed. Always. The word hung between them. A promise. A commitment. A future possibility neither of them was quite ready to name. After Autumn had showered and changed, after the children had woken up full of stories about their adventure with Dad, during the storm, after breakfast had been made and school preparations completed, Autumn walked Collier to his car. Last night mattered, she said. Not just to them, to me. I'm glad I could be here. You didn't just show up. You stayed. You put them first without hesitation. You rescheduled your entire day because they needed you. Her voice caught. That's what being a parent actually is. I'm learning from the best. Autumn looked at him, and Collier saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen in 8 years. Something that looked dangerously like forgiveness. We have a family dinner on Sunday nights, she said. It's a tradition, the 4 of us. But if you'd like to join us this week, she paused, you'd be welcome. I'd love that. Good. 5 p.m. And Collier, don't bring anything fancy. We do homemade pizza, and it gets messy. Messy sounds perfect. As he drove home, Collier realized he'd just been invited into the inner circle. The sacred family tradition. The Sunday dinners that belonged to the four of them. Progress. Month 6 arrived with unexpected devastation. Collier was in a meeting when his assistant buzzed with urgency. "Mr. Thorne, it's your grandfather's assistant. It's an emergency." His grandfather had suffered a major heart attack, was in critical condition in Boston. The family was demanding Collier return immediately to handle business transitions and take over company leadership. The timing couldn't have been worse. He'd just earned Sunday dinners. The children were calling him Dad without hesitation. Autumn was beginning to soften, to trust, to maybe, possibly, consider that he'd actually changed. And now his family was demanding he choose. Again, Boston or Seattle, legacy or love, the company or his children, everything he'd been raised to value versus everything that actually mattered. Collier called his therapist. Emergency session via video call from his office. "Tell me what you're feeling." Dr. Morrison said, "Trapped. Like I'm 18 again, being told that Thorne men don't get to choose what they want, that duty and legacy and family expectations matter more than personal happiness. But you're not 18. You're 38. You've done the work. You know who you want to be. So, what's the real question here? Whether I'm strong enough to walk away from everything I was taught mattered. Whether I can disappoint my entire family and live with that choice. Can you live with disappointing your children instead?" The question landed like a punch. "No," Collier said immediately. "No, I can't." "Then you have your answer." That evening, Collier called a family meeting. His first time using that phrase. His first time stepping into the role of parent who had the right to call everyone together. The four of them, Autumn and the triplets, sat around the dining table in the Ballard house looking at him with varying degrees of curiosity and concern. "I need to talk to you all about something important." Collier's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the table. 3 pairs of eyes, his eyes, fixed on him with unnerving focus. Autumn's expression was carefully neutral. "My grandfather is very sick. He's in Boston and my family wants me to go back there to help run the company." "For how long?" Ridge asked immediately, always focused on logistics. "They want me to move back. Permanently." The silence was deafening. "Oh." Piper's voice was very small. "Are you going?" Cove's question was quiet, resigned, like he'd expected this moment all along. Collier looked at Autumn. She sat very still, her face carefully blank in that way that meant she was feeling everything and showing nothing. "That depends," he said slowly, "on whether you'd all be willing to come with me." The silence shifted, became something different. Shocked, hopeful, confused. "Come with you." Autumn's voice was carefully controlled. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that we move to Boston. All of us. Together." He pulled out his phone, showing them the research he'd already done. "I've looked into schools. There's an excellent STEM program for Ridge at the Brookline Academy, an arts magnet school for Cove. And Piper, there's a school with a nationally recognized art program that would love someone with your talent." He turned to Autumn. "And Seattle General has been trying to recruit you for their cardiac unit for 2 years. I checked. They'd match your current salary and your current title. You want us to uproot our entire lives to follow you across the country?" Autumn's tone was dangerous now. "No." Collier met her eyes steadily. "I want to find a way for all of us to be together. But if you say no, if you want to stay here, then I'm staying too. I'll walk away from the company, from my family, from all of it. Because 6 months ago you asked me what my priorities were, and I've spent every day since proving that it's you. All of you. You'd give up your family's company?" Ridge looked skeptical. "In a heartbeat. I already told my board that I'm transitioning to a remote consulting role, regardless of what happens. The company will survive without me, but I won't survive without you." "That's very dramatic," Cove observed. "It's very true." Collier looked at each of his children in turn. 6 months ago, your mom gave me a chance to prove I'd changed, to show that I could be the father you deserve. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, but I've shown up. Every Thursday, every Saturday, every Sunday. Every time you needed me." He turned back to Autumn. "And I'll keep showing up, whether that's here in Seattle, or in Boston, or on the moon, because you're my family. And nothing is more important than that." "Mom?" Piper looked at Autumn with wide eyes. "This is a family decision. Autumn said quietly. We all get a say. Then I say, we vote, Ridge announced. That's how we do big decisions. Everyone gets one vote and majority rules. What are we voting on exactly? Cove asked. Whether we want to move to Boston with Dad or stay here in Seattle and have Dad stay with us. Those aren't the same thing, Piper pointed out. One means we leave everything we know. The other means Dad leaves everything he knows. Exactly. Ridge looked at Collier. So which matters more to you, the company or us? You. Always you. Then prove it. Ridge crossed his arms. Tell us right now. If we vote to stay in Seattle, will you actually stay? Will you really walk away from being CEO of a billion-dollar company? Yes. No hesitation? No regret? None. The three children looked at each other, some silent communication passing between them that only siblings can share. We need to talk privately, Ridge announced. Family meeting without Dad. No offense. None taken. Collier stood. I'll wait outside. He walked out onto the porch where this had all started 6 months ago, where Autumn had laid down her conditions and given him the chance to prove himself. Through the window, he could see the four of them in intense discussion. Piper gesturing wildly, Ridge taking notes, Cove sketching something, Autumn facilitating, letting them express their fears and hopes. This was his family, the one he'd thrown away, the one that had somehow, miraculously, given him a second chance. And if they decided to stay in Seattle, he'd stay without hesitation, because he'd meant every word. Nothing mattered more than this. The door opened. All four of them filed out onto the porch. We voted, Ridge said formally. 2-1, with one abstention. Collier's heart hammered. Okay. Piper and I voted to stay in Seattle. Ridge continued. Cove abstained because he said both options had merit and he couldn't choose. And Mom, he looked at Autumn. Mom said this was our decision and she'd support whatever we chose. Okay. Collier tried to keep his voice steady. Then, we stay in Seattle. I'll call Boston tomorrow and make it official. Wait. Piper held up a hand. We're not done. We voted to stay in Seattle, Ridge explained. But only if you really mean it. Only if you're actually choosing us over the company. Not just saying it, actually doing it. I am. Collier knelt down so he was at eye level with all three of them. I'm choosing you over the company, over my family's expectations, over everything I was raised to believe mattered, because you're what actually matters. You're everything. You swear? Piper asked. I swear, because Grandma Cece always said actions matter more than words, Cove added quietly. And this is a pretty big action. It is, and I'm ready to take it. The three children looked at each other one more time. Then, as one, they launched themselves at him. The hug was fierce, trusting, everything he'd spent 6 months earning. Over their heads, Collier's eyes met Autumn's. She stood apart, arms crossed, but her expression had cracked completely. Tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she mouthed silently. He nodded, understanding everything she couldn't say. That this moment, this choice, was the proof she'd needed. That walking away from billions of dollars to stay with three children he'd only known for 6 months was the action that mattered more than any words. Later, after the children had gone to bed buzzing with excitement about Dad staying forever, Autumn and Collier sat on the porch in the darkness. You really meant it, she said, about walking away. Every word. Your grandfather is going to disown you. Probably. Your family will never forgive you. Likely not. And you're okay with that? Collier thought about his grandfather's cold disapproval, his father's emotional absence, the family that had raised him to value legacy over love, duty over happiness, appearances over authenticity. I spent my whole life trying to earn their approval, trying to be the man they wanted me to be, and it made me into someone I'm ashamed of, someone who could hurt the woman he loved, someone who missed 8 years of his children's lives. He turned to look at Autumn. I don't want their approval anymore. I want to be someone my kids can be proud of, someone worthy of the family you built, someone who knows what actually matters, and what actually matters. This, you, them, Sunday dinners and robotics club and art class and soccer games, real relationships with real people who actually care about who I am instead of what I represent. Autumn was quiet for a long moment. I'm starting to believe you've actually changed, Is that enough? Enough for what? For you to trust me again? To maybe, eventually, consider letting me back into your life as more than just co-parent? Collier. Her voice was soft. You hurt me worse than anyone ever has. You said things I'll never forget. You made me feel worthless and broken and defective. I know, and I'm sorrier for that than I can ever express. But, she continued, you've also shown up every single day for 6 months. You've put our children first without hesitation. You've been patient with my boundaries. You've earned their trust and their love. And tonight you literally chose them over billions of dollars. So what does that mean? It means I'm willing to try, to see if we can build something new, not what we had before. That's gone, but maybe something better, something built on who we are now instead of who we were then. Collier's heart stopped. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying we can go on a date. One date, just the two of us, and we'll see what happens. I would love that. But Collier, her voice turned serious. We take this slow. We don't tell the kids we're trying to figure out if there's still something between us. We don't make promises we can't keep. And if it doesn't work, we go back to being co-parents without drama. Agreed? Agreed. Good. Now go home. I have surgery at 6 a.m. and you've kept me up past my bedtime. As Collier drove home, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 8 years. Hope. Real hope. Not based on wishful thinking or temporary gestures, but on 6 months of consistent action and one massive choice that proved where his priorities actually were. His phone rang. His grandfather's lawyer. Mr. Thorne, your grandfather is demanding to speak with you about your decision to remain in Seattle. Tell my grandfather that I've made my choice. I'm staying with my family. If he wants to remove me from company leadership or disinherit me or whatever consequences he's planning, I understand and accept them. He's not going to take this well. I know, but I'm not changing my mind. After he hung up, Collier felt lighter than he had in years. Freedom from expectations. Liberation from trying to be someone he wasn't. Permission to build the life he actually wanted. 2 weeks later, Collier officially resigned as CEO of Thorne Industries. He transitioned to a consulting role that paid significantly less, but allowed him to work remotely and set his own hours. His family's reaction was exactly as expected. His grandfather wrote him out of the will. His father stopped speaking to him entirely. His cousins sent messages ranging from shocked to supportive to gleefully anticipating his failure. Collier didn't care. He used his severance and personal wealth to launch a sustainable technology incubator in Seattle, focused on supporting women and minority entrepreneurs, using his expertise and capital for something that actually mattered. The kids were thrilled to have him around more. Ridge invited him to coach the robotics team. Cove asked for help on increasingly complex art projects. Piper demanded his presence at every soccer game, art show, and school event. And Autumn went on that promised date with him. They went to a small Italian restaurant in Ballard. Nothing fancy, no pretense. Just two people who'd once loved each other, trying to figure out if they could find that again. This is strange, Autumn said over pasta. Being on a date with you. Good strange or bad strange? Jury's still out. She smiled slightly. Tell me about your incubator, the sustainable technology thing. Collier explained his vision, using his experience and resources to help entrepreneurs who didn't have access to traditional funding, focusing on environmental solutions, building something meaningful instead of just profitable. That sounds like something the old you would have considered impractical, Autumn observed. The old me thought a lot of stupid things. And the new me is figuring out that meaning matters more than money. That supporting 3 businesses started by brilliant women who care about the planet is more satisfying than another quarter of record profits. I like the new you, Autumn said softly. Yeah? Yeah. She reached across the table, hesitating before touching his hand. You're becoming someone I can actually respect again. That means everything to me. They didn't rush, didn't fall into bed, or make grand declarations. Just talked, laughed, remembered good moments from their past while acknowledging painful ones. At the end of the night, Collier walked her to her door. Can I kiss you? He asked. Autumn looked at him for a long moment. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. That's okay. I can wait. Can you? Because 8 years ago you weren't very patient. 8 years ago, I was an idiot. I'm trying very hard not to be that person anymore. Autumn smiled. Ask me again in a month. It's a date. Over the following months, Collier and Autumn dated carefully, quietly, keeping it separate from their co-parenting relationship, making sure the children's stability came first. They went to museums and coffee shops and bookstores. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, the people they'd been and the people they were becoming. Collier met Autumn's friends from the hospital. Brilliant, fierce women who made it very clear that if he hurt her again, they would destroy him professionally and personally. Autumn met Collier's therapist, Dr. Morrison, who confirmed that yes, he'd done the work. Yes, he'd changed. Yes, he understood why his family patterns had made him into someone capable of such cruelty. And slowly, carefully, they fell in love again. Not the desperate, intense love of their 20s. Something quieter, deeper, built on genuine knowledge of each other instead of idealized fantasy. 6 months after their first date, Collier asked Autumn to marry him. Again, they were at Green Lake Park, same place where he'd proposed the first time 13 years ago. But everything was different now. "I know this is the same place," Collier said. "Same location, but I'm not the same man. And you're not the same woman. We're different people now. Better people. People who've learned hard lessons about what matters." He knelt in the grass, holding a ring that was nothing like the ostentatious diamond he'd given her the first time. This one was simple, elegant, a single stone set in recycled gold because Cove had mentioned Autumn cared about ethical sourcing. "Autumn Castellano, will you marry me again? Not because it makes sense socially, or because our families expect it, or because it's practical, but because I love you with everything I am, because I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you, because I can't imagine my future without you in it." Autumn looked at him with tears in her eyes. "You hurt me so badly," she whispered. "I didn't think I could ever trust you again. I know, but you've shown up every single day. You've put our children first. You've walked away from everything you were raised to value. You've become someone I'm proud to know. Is that a yes? Ask me properly, with the children, as a family, because that's what we are now." So Collier arranged a family dinner. Sunday night tradition, homemade pizza and chaos and love. After dinner, after the children had decimated 3 pizzas and were starting on dessert, Collier cleared his throat. "I have something important to ask you all." 3 pairs of eyes turned to him with curiosity. "You know I've been dating your mom." He glanced at Autumn, who nodded encouragingly. "And you know I love her very much, and I love all 3 of you more than I knew it was possible to love anything." He pulled out the ring. "So I wanted to ask your permission, before I ask her, if it would be okay with you if I asked your mom to marry me." Ridge's eyes went wide. "You want to marry Mom?" "I do, but only if you're all comfortable with it. Because this isn't just about me and your mom. It's about all 5 of us becoming a family, officially." "Would you live here?" Piper asked. "If that's what everyone wants, yes. And you'd be our dad for real? Like, legally, officially, permanently?" "If your mom says yes." The 3 children looked at each other, another one of their silent communications. "We vote yes," Ridge announced, unanimously. "Yeah?" Collier's voice was rough with emotion. "Yeah, you've proven you're not going anywhere. You've chosen us over everything else, and Mom smiles more when she's with you. So yes." Collier turned to Autumn. She was crying, laughing, radiant. "So, Autumn Castellano, 3rd time's the charm. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making up for the years I missed? Will you build a family with me, for real this time, based on love instead of expectations?" "Yes." Autumn laughed through tears. "Yes, I'll marry you. Again. For real this time." The children cheered. Collier slipped the ring on her finger. And for the first time in 8 years, everything felt right. The wedding was 6 months later. Small, intimate, held in their backyard. The one they'd bought together, a house big enough for their blended family. The ceremony was simple. No enormous production, no society pages. Just the people who mattered. "Do you, Autumn Castellano, take this man to be your husband, again?" The officiant smiled, knowing his flaws and failures, believing in his capacity to grow, trusting him with your heart one more time. Autumn looked at Collier. He'd aged in the 2 years since Piper had walked into his office. Silver threading his dark hair, crow's feet from genuine smiles, the kind of peace that comes from knowing exactly what matters. "I do," she said clearly. Again. Forever this time. And do you, Collier Thorne, take this woman to be your wife, promising to honor her dreams, support her brilliance, and never again mistake status for love or duty for devotion? I do. Collier's voice was steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Every day for the rest of my life. 3 children cheered from the front row, Ridge and Cove in matching suits they'd chosen themselves, Piper in a dress she'd painted with flowers and butterflies and hearts. I now pronounce you married. Again, and this time, may it last forever. As Collier kissed his wife, his children rushed forward to join the hug, a pile of arms and laughter and joy. Later, during the reception, Piper pulled Collier aside. Dad, remember when I walked into your office that day? Every detail, sweetheart. I was so scared you'd say no, that you wouldn't want to be my dad. Collier knelt down to her level, just like he had 2 years ago. Best thing that ever happened to me was you walking through that door. You gave me back everything I'd lost and didn't think I deserved. Mom says we saved each other. Your mom is very wise. She also says you owe her for 8 years of single parenting. Collier laughed. What's the going rate? She said she'd accept a lifetime of you doing the dishes and never complaining about her surgery schedule. Deal. As the evening progressed, Collier found himself watching his family, his wife, his children, the life they'd built from the wreckage of his worst mistakes. What are you thinking? Autumn asked, slipping her hand into his. That 8 years ago, I walked away from the best thing in my life because I was too scared and too stupid to recognize it. And now I wake up every day grateful that Piper is stubborn enough to track down a father she'd never met, and that you're brave enough to give me a second chance I didn't earn. You earned it, Autumn said softly. Every day for 2 years you showed up. You chose us. That's how you earned it. I'll keep choosing you, all of you, for the rest of my life. Good, because you're stuck with us now. Best trap I've ever fallen into. As they danced under string lights while their children played nearby, Collier thought about the little girl who'd walked into his office 2 years ago, unaware of his identity, looking for a father for one night. She'd said something that day that had broken his heart completely. I don't need your money. I just need someone to dance with. Such a simple request, such a profound absence. And in granting that request, in becoming the father she'd asked for, he'd found redemption, purpose, and a love he'd thought was lost forever. Have you ever had to decide whether to give someone a second chance? Have you ever watched someone truly change, not just promise to change, but actually do the work to become better? This is what real transformation looks like. Not grand gestures or pretty words, but consistent action over years. If this story touched your heart, if you believe people can change when they truly want to, let me know in the comments. Tell me about a time someone in your life proved they were different, or a time you gave someone a second chance and didn't regret it. And if you believe in the power of forgiveness, in the courage it takes to trust again, hit that subscribe button. Because stories like this, stories about real growth and hard-won redemption, matter. Sometimes the greatest gifts come from our greatest mistakes. Sometimes the people we hurt most teach us how to be better. Sometimes families break and heal stronger in the broken places. And sometimes, if you're very, very lucky, a little girl walks into your office and changes everything. Collier Thorne learned that being a father isn't about biology or timing. It's about showing up, consistently, in the boring moments and the beautiful ones. In the middle of the night when someone's scared, on Thursday afternoons when you'd rather be anywhere else. At soccer games in the rain and robotics competitions and art shows. It's about choosing your family every single day. Not because it's easy or convenient, but because they're what matters most. Autumn learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to believe in someone's capacity for change. It means setting boundaries and watching to see if they're respected. It means being brave enough to trust again without being naive. And Piper, Cove, and Ridge learned that families can be rebuilt, that people can grow, that sometimes the dad who wasn't there before shows up and stays. 2 years after that first meeting, the Thorne Castellano family was thriving. Ridge's robotics team won state championships. He started teaching coding to younger kids, passing on what he'd learned. Cove's art was featured in a gallery show. His heart sculpture, the one made for his mother, sold for $5,000. He donated the money to a program supporting single mothers in medical school. Piper started an after-school program teaching art to kids in underserved communities. using her gift to make sure other children had access to beauty and creativity. Autumn became chief of cardiac surgery at Seattle General, still saving hearts, both literally and figuratively. And Collier built a life that mattered. His incubator had funded 43 companies, created hundreds of jobs, supported entrepreneurs who cared about making the world better instead of just making money. But his greatest achievement was simpler than that. He was present. He showed up. He kept his promises. He loved his family with actions, not just words. Every Thursday at robotics club, every Saturday at art class, every Sunday at family dinner, every middle-of-the-night emergency, and every ordinary Tuesday morning. He chose them, every single day, for the rest of his life, because that's what love actually is, not the desperate passion of youth or the convenient partnership of social equals, but the daily decision to show up for the people who matter most. Sometimes it's boring, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's grocery shopping at 9 p.m. or sitting through terrible recorder, concerts, or having the same conversation about homework for the 100th time. But it's also everything. It's the small moments that build a life, the consistency that creates trust, the proof that you mean what you say. Collier Thorne spent 8 years building an empire that meant nothing, and 2 years building a family that meant everything. He learned that being called dad is better than being called CEO, that his children's respect matters more than his grandfather's approval, that Sunday dinners with people who love you are worth more than quarterly earnings reports. He learned that the woman he'd called barren had given him the richest life imaginable, 3 brilliant children, a purpose beyond profit, a love worth fighting for, and he learned that it's never too late to change, to choose differently, to become the person you should have been all along. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever needed proof that people can truly transform, share this video. Let someone else know that second chances are real, that forgiveness is possible, that families can heal. Comment below and tell me what you learned from Collier and Autumn's journey. What would you have done in Autumn's position? Could you have forgiven someone who hurt you that badly? What does real change look like to you? And subscribe to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips for more stories about transformation, redemption, and the power of choosing love over everything else. Because in the end, that's what this story is about. Choice. The choice to be better. The choice to stay. The choice to love, even when it's hard. The choice to believe in someone's capacity to grow. Sometimes a little girl walks into your office and offers you a second chance you don't deserve. What you do with that chance, that's what defines you. Collier Thorne chose wisely. And 2 years later, dancing with his wife in the backyard of the home they'd built together, surrounded by 3 children who called him Dad, he knew with absolute certainty that he'd finally gotten it right. The woman he'd thrown away had given him everything back, and this time he would never, ever let it go.